Well, hello, my name's Andy Tidy and welcome back to another edition of Canal Hunter. In the last couple of episodes we were exploring the Cannock Extension Canal, the canal that linked northwards from Pelsall Common out to the coalfields of Cannock and Hensford. Now, I may have reached the end of the trail for the Cannock Extension Canal, but I certainly haven't reached the end of the canals in this area. You see, about 20 years before the Cannock Extension Canal was built, the Hatherton Branch Canal was built by the Staffordshire and Worcester Canal Company. And we'll be having a look at that in our next episode of Canal Hunter. But for today, I want to have a look at the Churchbridge Flight of Locks and a little bit of the Hatherton Branch Canal. The Hatherton Branch Canal was brought up this valley from Calf Heath in 1841, and it was built to reach the collieries and the brickworks and the tile works in this area near Cannock. And because for 2 decades this was the head of navigation for the Hatherton Branch Canal, there had to be a reservoir and a water supply. And for those 20 years, the reservoir you see behind me was the main feeder into the Hatherton Branch. This is the Hatherton Reservoir. It was fed by Worley Brook and it led down into Hawkins Basin and then on into the top of the Hatherton Branch Canal. Now, the Staffs and Worcester, via the Hatherton Branch, could see there was great potential in extending its route to connect in to the Cannock Extension Canal when it was being proposed by the BCN. In fact, an agreement was reached between the two canal companies in 1854 that this connection should be made. And to that end, the BCN and the Staffs and Worcester went equal shares in buying the land that was needed, mostly from the Marquess of Anglesey. The records suggest that the 13 locks and pounds were built between 1858 and 1859. But then the construction of the Cannock Extension went on rather longer than was expected. So it stood idle until 1863, when the Cannock Extension Canal finally was able to make a junction at the top and provide a water supply down the locks to enable them to be used. The canal was actually wildly successful. It carried the better part of 1 million tonnes of coal out of the Cannock coalfield and down the Hatherton Branch in its heyday. And it continued to work for 86 years until the business came to a halt in 1949. So the canal had outlived its usefulness and it was finally abandoned in 1955 and the land conveyed to the National Coal Board in 1963. And thereafter, the line of the locks was destroyed by the open cast coal mining. The Churchbridge Locks went first, followed by the Cannock Extension just in 1963, 1964. The area was then massively open cast, and the story, well, you can look at the last 2 videos. They tell the story of the loss of the canals in this region. It appears that the Staffs and Worcester were more keen on building this link than the BCN. The BCN and the Staffs and Worcester went halves to acquire the land, but it was the Staffs and Worcester who actually paid for the construction of the locks. The commercial traffic on this canal finished in 1950, and the last recorded coal boat came down it, just 1 boat, in 1951. The formal abandonment ceremony took place in the summer of 1952. But of course, there's always one, isn't there? 2 weeks after the final ceremonial boat passed down the locks, a young John Lilly decided, along with his father and the rest of his family, they were going to have a bash themselves. They hired a half of an old working boat which had been converted into a pleasure cruiser, and they descended through the Churchbridge Locks and then down the Hatherton Branch. The pictures and the story told suggest it was one very long, arduous trip. 3 miles, and it took them all day. Couldn't use the engine, they had to tow it all the way, but they managed to force a passage, and that was the very, very last boat to ever pass through the Churchbridge Flight of Locks and then the Hatherton Branch Canal. Now, the way I want to tackle this episode is to follow the line of the 13 Churchbridge Locks down from the top. The problem is the top 4 lie in an area of landfill, and it's active landfill, so I can't go there. It then follows beneath a succession of industrial units coming down the hill and eventually into the Orbital Business Park. And if you know the A5, it comes under the building which houses Sofology, the chair warehouse. Finally, the last lock can be found under the roundabout at the very bottom. So I'm going to go out there a bit like I did on the Bentley Canal. I'm going to try and follow the line as close as I possibly can, and I'll intersperse it with all the old photos that I can find. We're starting off our hunt for the Churchbridge flight around the back of the Briggs equipment store. The equipment store sits directly over the upper part of the flight, and locks 1, 2, 3 and 4 tumble down, with the last lock, lock 4, being immediately behind the building. The storage area for Caterpillar trucks actually follows the line of the original road that used to run across the tail of lock number 4. That was Lock Bridge. So the canal went under Lock Bridge and then immediately under the far corner of the building in front of me. Lock number 5 actually sits underneath the Briggs building. So what we'll do is we'll go around the corner of their building and we'll get ourselves right onto the line and see if we can follow the line as accurately as we possibly can all the way down through to the bottom lock. So I'm standing on the tail of lock number 5 with the lock buried underneath the factory. The line of the canal went straight across the orbital way, which is in front of me, and cut through the factory building directly opposite. Now I'm going to have to be fairly creative as I follow the Churchbridge flight of locks. It's obviously been completely reprofiled and landscaped over. You can tell there's a slight decline down the hill, so you're going in the right direction, but frankly there's nothing left. It's been completely redeveloped. So this is just one of those academic exercises, rather like exploring the line of the Bentley Canal, and all I can do is to try to follow the route through the modern landscape as accurately as I can. Now, when I say I'm going to follow the line as accurate as I possibly can, I'm not going to be stupid about this. These sites have got security guards on them, so there's no way I'm going blundering through here. I'm quite happy to accept that the line of the canal followed underneath this car park in that direction and went under the extreme left-hand end of that white building you can see at the far side behind all the diggers. Lock number 6 is directly under where I'm standing right now, and lock number 7 actually sat underneath that white building. So let's get round to the back of it and carry on following the line down the hill. Now, the absence of physical reference points makes this particular canal hunt rather challenging. I know from looking at the old side-by-side maps that after the canal came out from the industrial site behind me, it then led into what is now the new Orbital Business Park. And I know that the start of the canal went into the back corner of the second unit in from the left as I'm looking at it now. That's a bit confusing. But what I'm looking at is this. The line of the canal ran down immediately behind these industrial units. And lock number 8 was immediately behind unit number 2, which is the one which is directly in front of us now. And interestingly, as I look on the road, there is a clue to the canal's old line. The canal's old line often contains some kind of drainage ditch, and here, exactly on the line where I would expect the canal to be, there is a manhole cover. And not only is there one manhole cover, if I walk out and I follow the line that I'm expecting the canal to be on, in the middle of the street there's another. and following that line in, I go straight in behind unit number 2, and the canal line cuts across between unit 2 and into unit 3 and emerges through unit 3's front door. So I think I'll have to go round to the other side and see if I can find where the canal emerges. So I've come round to the far side, counting across. Pets at home I class as unit number 1. Carpet right is unit number 2, and the canal came into the back of that unit. And as far as I can tell, the canal emerged out from unit number 3, which is Harvey's, and it came right out through their front door. So we're just going down lock number 9, coming through Harvey's, and all the old boats would have come out pretty much through the front door. Now from here the canal entered what they called the Long Pound. It wasn't actually very long, but to go from the tail of lock 9, which I'm standing on now, to the entrance to lock 10, the entrance to lock 10 clipped the building you can see just over there. So we'll carry on walking across the car park, find lock 10 and continue on down to the bottom at lock 13. So we're now crossing over the site of lock number 10. Heading still onwards, looking for lock number 11. And lock number 11 appears to drive straight through the Costa drive-through. So the entrance to lock number 11 was pretty much through the windows on the southern side of Costa. And then the line headed straight across the car park and into the front doors of Sofology.
None of our sophologists are paid on commission, so we're here to help you find your perfect sophie. We are only at Sofology.
Now the tail of lock 12 sat at the extreme end of the Sofology warehouse, and the short pound led down to the final lock, lock number 13, and that actually sat on the left hand side of the roundabout in front of us. Now don't worry too much about the levels here. The Sofology centre sits up on a huge mound that was built up about 10 years ago. The actual land level of the flight of locks, probably a good 20-25 feet lower than where I am now. But we're looking out over the busy roundabout, and the lock ran right through the left-hand edge of it. Now, I may be keen to follow the line of these canals, but I'm not insane. I'm not going to go and try to stomp my way across the roundabout itself. I'm happy to be able to simply look at it from here and say that's where the final and the 13th lock stood. And by coming round just a shade, we can see the western side of the roundabout, and it's on that site that the iconic White Lion pub used to stand. So when you look at all of those old photos coming down the Churchbridge flight with the white pub standing at the end, it's just in there on the western side of the roundabout. So Lock 12 exited from the back of Sofology, but much closer to today's ground level where I'm standing. Entering into Lock 13 on the far side of this roundabout. And after exiting the back of the roundabout, the canal cut across this way and burrowed under what is now the railway embankment and was originally a tramway embankment, halfway between the link across on the far left and the bridge on our right. And that marks the end of the Churchbridge flight, 13 locks, and also the end of, strictly speaking, the BCN territory. From here, Watling Street crossed over the line of the Churchbridge flight of locks, and from there on it was the Hatherton Branch Canal. So we're now standing on the final, most easterly part of the Hatherton Branch Canal as it leads up to Churchbridge Locks. The course of the canal is now a narrow public open space. The Whirley Brook runs down to my left as I'm looking downstream here. There's a footpath, it's enticing, so I think I'll go and follow it and see what I can see. I love the way that even when they redevelop areas, you still find little traces of canal heritage. Barge close. Okay, it should be narrowboat, but let's not quibble. So the line of the canal came through the Cannock industrial estate, straight through where the white panel van is in front of me, and across Walkmill Lane into the road beyond. And right here on Mill Lane there was Walkmill Bridge. This end of Vine Lane now stands directly on top of the line, the old Hatherton branch. And it will be about here that to the right there was the Walkmill Basin. And on the other side, the much more extensive Hawkins Basin. Now the Hawkins Basin was a pretty substantial affair. It was nearly 2.5 acres in size. It had a long entry channel, it had an aqueduct over the Whirley Brook, and it had tramways that connected out to the coalfields of Cannock on one way and to the old Coppice Colliery on the other. The entry channel stretched away behind me, and it was only finally lost when the toll road was built and the basin actually extended all the way into the site of what is now the toll road. Now this area was incredibly busy. I mean, it's busy these days in a retail sense, but back then this was the site of the Walkmill Tileries, a huge brickworks. And then just on the other side of the canal there was the Longhouse brickworks. The place with a seething mass of industry, all powered by the coal extracted from the local collieries. It's not hard to imagine this being the course of a canal. It has that kind of feel to it. It's the right width and it's dead flat. Well, that's the end of the line as far as I can explore it today. From here my way is completely barred by a high security fence and then it's private land. Beyond here lies the site of 3 abandoned locks, and that would take us to Wedges Mill. And that's where I will start the next episode. So I guess that means that this episode of Canal Hunter comes to an end. We've journeyed down from Rumer Hill Junction. We've come down through the 13 Churchbridge Locks. We've come under the railway line. We've looked at Hatherton Reservoir, and we've followed the top mile or so of the Hatherton Branch Canal, last navigated in the summer of 1952. And in my next episode, we will resume the journey at the end of this closed section at Wedges Mill, and then we will pick up the line of the Hatherton Canal all the way through to its junction with the Staffs and Worcester. So, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Happy hunting, and I'll see you soon.